and a book review for Arthur C. Clarke's Childhood's End. I read this about 2 months ago or so. I haven't gotten around to making a video for it, but now I will. It's a science fiction book, and it is, I would say it's about as good as Arthur C. Clarke's Space Odyssey 2001, which I've done also a review on this channel. And I'll give you a brief synopsis of it, so there will be some spoilers, because I do want to discuss the book. And I'm going to go through the book, and I've got a few things I've underlined in the book that I think are interesting points to make. So the book starts out about the late 20th century. We've got the Soviet Union and the U.S. competing to get a spaceship out of the Earth, and they're about to do that, and aliens visit the Earth. And they have these giant spaceships, and they're out in space, but they're visible from Earth, so that halts all the spaceship progress. And they start speaking to they observe the Earth for a little bit, and I think the military on Earth fires some missiles or something at them, but they don't do anything. And eventually they start intervening on the Earth, and they make it more peaceful. Doesn't really go into details of what exactly he's doing, but they intervene a little bit on the Earth. They stop apartheid in South Africa. I guess Arthur C. Clarke is trying to say that only aliens could stop apartheid in South Africa of black on white violence, etc. It's still going on today, by the way. It's about one of the worst countries in the world for murder in the world is South Africa right now. But anyways, so they start intervening, and then eventually there is an ambassador that's chosen, a human ambassador who is going to speak to the aliens on a regular basis. So he gets his little ship that he gets picked up in a little alien ship, and the alien ship brings him up to the mothership, and then he speaks to this one alien, but the alien's behind a cover, and he never gets to see him. But they talk about what's going on Earth and what needs to be done, because essentially these aliens are managing the Earth's population and making it better, creating a kind of prosperity or a golden age, getting rid of warfare and all that kind of stuff. So eventually, though, the one ambassador brings in an X-ray machine or something like that, hides an X-ray machine in his briefcase, and sends a scan out to see what's behind the curtain, so to speak. And they do get an image. They get a silhouette of what the alien is, and it's just like this really big kind of thing. But they don't see any other details. So eventually, the aliens do visit the Earth, and there's one representative that comes down, and it's weird. I remember the scene. The ship comes down, and the alien asks for two children to come up the stairs or whatever it is first before he comes out. So two children. I can't remember if I think they're kind of like mesmerized. The children just kind of walk up, like it's weird. The children just walk up the escalator. There's no fear, and then the alien comes out with the children on his shoulders, because the aliens are huge. They're from the kind of the imagery that I transfixed in my mind, they were like big hippopotamus people, like just big faces, and they have horns and they have wings at the back too, but they're just big people, and they're tall, and these little kids are on the alien's shoulders, and this is how the alien decides to present himself for the first time to human race, to have these kids on him. I guess as a psychological effect, right? So eventually they're visited, but what happens is the constraints on the Earth become greater. They start to erode progress and creativity and culture, and that starts to create unrest on the Earth, ironically as well. That people are in like a heaven almost, an ideal. There's no warfare anymore. I assume no one's dying anymore. The aliens even intervene a few times on people who might have died. They stop that from happening. It really does create a kind of heaven or ideal or utopia. And ironically, it starts to create unrest with people, because they're no longer expected or encouraged or even permitted to engage in research and experimentation and creativity. So that starts to annoy some people on Earth. And so what happens is there's actually a little island, or I can't remember if it's like, I think it's an island or something, that there's people that immigrate to this island and then start a new society where they actually can innovate. So there's some, I guess, rebellion to the aliens' oversight. They're called the overlords, by the way. So they're ruling the Earth right now and creating this utopia. But some people don't like that, so they start their own little society. But that's a minor part of the story. Another thing that kind of happens is more aliens start to visit, but maybe only a handful. So it's not just the one representative anymore that the ambassador had been talking to. Now it's a few others, and they're most particularly interested in researching this old psychology. Like, I can't quite remember what it's called, but it's like extrasensory perception or something like that, some kind of psychic thing. That there's this one scene where another alien visits a party, and the reason is that the guy that has the house where the party is at has a giant library of old psychology books, occult books, and old ESP books and parapsychology kind of stuff. And this alien spends, I don't know how long, reading all these books. And of course, the aliens can read a lot faster than humans, so they're reading, I don't know, a book an hour, or less than that, or I can't quite remember. But he's looking through all this stuff, which is weird, right? And then at the same party, they bring out a Ouija board. So the Ouija board is supposed to be an example of this parapsychology that this alien is interested in. And the Ouija board actually, I can't remember, someone asked the question of where do the aliens come from or something like that. And the Ouija board spells out, with all these people holding the Ouija thing, the Ouija board spells out a star system that the humans know about and had labeled. And that's apparently where the the overlords actually come from. And apparently, because they know the direction of their supply ships, these ships kind of come and go on the Earth's surface. Because they know the direction of where these starships warp off to, they actually were able to confirm that indeed that star system that was spelled out by the Ouija board is in that direction of where these supply ships go. So it's another minor part of the story. It doesn't really matter where they come from, but I guess it's just the author is trying to suggest that the humans are wondering about where these aliens had come from. So eventually what happens is, because of this increased curiosity with where the aliens come from and who they really are and stuff, because they have these wings and apparently they fly on their own planet because their planet has really low gravity, but they can't fly on Earth because the Earth's gravity is so much higher. Eventually what happens is that I believe it's that I think it's some kind of underwater laboratory. The aliens are essentially engaging in an anthropological study of humans, and there's actually a ship, which is kind of funny. I think it's a ship that's orbiting Earth that has Earth artifacts on it, and at one point, a human visits that ship. It's either the ship or the home planet, which I'll get to in a second. And the artifact guy holder, the alien artifact holder, wants this human to identify what these things are, but he can only identify some of the stuff. So he's disappointed. But it's kind of funny, that part of the story where you've got an alien that's studying humans, and just like we study like ancient Egypt, we have all these little artifacts, or the artifacts from prior to even civilization with the stone axes and skulls and stuff, right? We actually have an alien who's studying human culture and human artifacts. So eventually what happens is the aliens are wanting to take samples back to their home planet of animals on Earth. So they want these giant squids, and they also want a giant whale. And they don't actually want a real whale. They just want a fake, made-up, built whale. And so I can't remember. It's either the island that was creative, or it's this underwater laboratory. So this guy is making this whale, to send off to the alien ship because they want to collect all this stuff. And one of the main character, I think it might be the ambassador, or it might be another main character, another human. He wants to stow himself in the whale to visit the alien planet, and it's kind of it brings up the whole Bible thing with Jonah and the whale kind of thing, right? Of course. So that happens, and he ejects himself with some drug because it's, I don't know how many years. He ejects himself with some drug so that he is asleep for most of the time. And anyway, so it happens, and he arrives at the alien world. And the alien world has a hell of a lot less oxygen and a lot less gravity. And so when he emerges out of his self-induced coma, he is weak and can only crawl. And eventually he is found by some of the aliens on the home planet. And they take care of him, but they're very indifferent. And eventually he's able to walk around, and he's studied. He's not. You never get the sense that he's a valued guest or a VIP. He's just kept away, but studied, but taken care of. It's not like they kill him or anything like that. And eventually he's sent back. Now, because of how far it is away, he's away for something like 60 years or 80 years or something like that. Really a long time. But he hasn't aged that long. He's only there for a few days or a month or a week or something like that. So eventually he does return, but when he returns, the Earth is completely different. And now it gets really strange. There's some like thing in space that eventually you start finding out what's really going on. The overlords are actually a caretaker species that are going around and studying the transformation of other species into a greater being. And this greater being that roams around space is called the Overmind, and it sucks up evolved species or something like that. And what happens is, eventually, the overlords, it's either the humans can't have children anymore, or the overlords prohibit it. And the children that are alive at the time, they start to evolve and warp and become strange. And they're eventually all taken away from their parents and put on a secluded island or continent. And when that happens, so we've already got the human race in a utopia, but getting bored, and there's some social unrest from that. Now we've got all the children taken away, and no one can have any more children. That is where the human race goes nuts, and they essentially kill themselves. People commit suicide, and there's just violence, and eventually the human race essentially wipes themselves out. Except for these kids. These kids are on this continent, and they have these psychic powers. And these kids are supposed to represent the next evolution of man, which are eventually sucked away by this Overmind, it's called, which is just some void in space. It just sucks them away eventually from the Earth. And so anyways, back to the guy who visited the home planet of the overlords. He comes back. The world, essentially the human race has been made extinct, except for this continent of warped kids. He asks the overlords to send him back to Earth so he could see what's going on, so he does. A few overlords stick around around the Earth to study the kids and to study the end of the Earth, I guess, but mostly the kids. And this guy sticks around, this last human sticks around just to see, I guess, what's happening. And all of this is just kind of the end of the Earth. Eventually the kids are taken away, and they just before that they collectively use their psychic powers to move the moon from its orbit or something, and anyways, the last human is transmitting to the alien ship about what's going on, and eventually it just kind of ends. Everything just kind of gets destroyed and the aliens leave. And you get this sense also that the overlords are envious that the human race gets to evolve, and they're stuck as these subject peoples to the overmind. So, and anyways, that's kind of Arthur C. Clarke's attempt to give a metaphor about what the meaning of life is, or whatever, right? And of course, the taking away of the kids and all that, and the being creative and all that, that is another attempt to describe what's part of being happy as a human. So that's essentially the story. So now I want to go through some interesting quotes I found from the book that I thought were worth discussing. So early on in the story, this is on page 11, it says here that all that the past ages had achieved was as nothing now. So this is when the aliens had visited, and they have superior technology. And consider, of course, the metaphor of, let's say, British and French and Spanish explorers visit North America and show and Africa, and show their much greater technology to the natives of those places. This is the same thing that happened here in the story when the aliens who have superior technology visit the Earth. In a sense, it starts to destroy the achievements of that other species, the humans or the natives in the other case. And what Arthur C. Clarke is saying is that this is detrimental. This will not only is this erosion of human achievement, but it perhaps more fundamentally, and maybe this is his point, consider when this erosion of the biblical truth, or according to people who believe in that stuff, that we're alone in the universe and the earth and humans and animals were created by a god and we're so special, kind of thing, right? The solipsistic attitude that's been in religious worldviews for a long time. Now that we're visited from another species that are superior, this again erodes this idea of the solipsistic human as the greatest in the universe hypothesis. And according to Clarke, this is a detrimental blow to human confidence and ego.